Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler du chapitre 8, grammaire 2, specifically the passé composé with être. So in this chapter, we've been learning to ask for, give, and refuse permission, tell how often we do things, describe a house, and tell where things are. So again, today specifically, we're looking at le passé composé avec être. So let's review what we already know about past tense. So we know there are three parts. The first being the subject, second, the helping verb, and third, the past participle. This is the same with passé composé with être. Okay. So, when writing in the past tense, there are now two possible helping verbs that we can choose from. First, we've already learned is avoir, and now we're going to learn about être. So now we have two choices. Okay, so the steps are going to look slightly different now. So the first step is the same. We're going to write our subject. So for example, we could use vous. Now step 2 is now going to be determining which helping verb to use. So that's what we need to spend most of our time on today. Okay, so how do I know which one to use? So there are two specific cases in which we're going to use être as our helping verb. One being with verbs of motion, and two being for reflexive verbs. So, verbs of motion refers to what is called Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp. See how the letters are spelled on the side. Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp. So what Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp is an acronym that stands for the first letter of the specific verbs that we conjugate with être. So the verbs that we're going to use with être are devenir, revenir, mourir, rester, sortir, venir, arriver, naître, descendre, entrer, rentrer, tomber, retourner, aller, monter, partir, and passer. So pause and write each of these down. These are the specific verbs of motion that we're going to conjugate with être in the past tense. Okay. So what do these words mean? Devenir means to become, revenir, to come back, mourir, to die, rester, to stay, sortir, to go out or take out, venir, to come, arriver, to arrive, naître, to be born, descendre, to go down, entrer, to enter, rentrer, to go back or to re-enter. Again, pause long enough to make sure you can copy these all down. Tomber means to fall. Retourner, to return. Aller, to go. Monter, to go up. Partir, to leave. And passer, to pass by or in front of. So all of these words refer to some type of motion. So what's a reflexive verb? This is the second category of verbs that are conjugated with être. So a reflexive verb is an action that is done to oneself. So for example, se laver is reflexive. It means to wash oneself. So if I were to say, je me lave, I wash myself. A non-example would be just laver by itself. This is not reflexive. It just means to wash. It's not referring to washing anyone in particular, not washing yourself. So that is not reflexive. So this first example would use être in the past tense. The second one would not. You can tell a verb is reflexive because it has a reflexive pronoun in front of it. So for example, me, te, se, nous, vous, or se. This first one has se in front of it, so I can tell it's a reflexive verb. Okay, so moving on to step 3. Now that we know which helping verb we're going to use, we have to put our helping verb. So really quickly, let's just review avoir. So remember, avoir means to have. So the forms are j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on a, nous avons, vous avez, il and elle ont. So avoir is not going to be our focus today, but I did want to take 2 seconds to review it. So etre is going to be the important one today. So remember, etre means to be. So let's review the forms of etre. We have je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, and il, elle sont. So it's really important to make sure you have all of these forms of the helping verb être down, because this is going to be our focus for today. Okay, so step 4 will be then to write the past participle. So remember, most of these are going to be regular verbs. So we're going to form them the same way we did before. So parler for ER verbs, you're going to drop your ER and add your E with an accent aigu. For regular IR verbs, you're going to drop your IR and add just an I. And finally, for RE verbs, you're going to drop your RE and add a U. So most of these are going to have regular past participles. So for the ones that are regular, I'm not going to display. There are, however, 5 verbs in the past tense with etre that are irregular, and for those you're going to have to learn. So devenir in past tense becomes devenu. Revenir in past tense becomes revenu. And venir in the past tense becomes venu. So all 3 of those look the same. So the other 2 that are irregular are mourir, meaning to die, becomes mort, M-O-R-T. And the opposite of it, naître, to be born, becomes simply né, and with the accent aigu on the E, né. So those are the only 5 past participles that are irregular with etre. All of the rest are completely regular. So for rester, drop your ER, add your E aigu. Sortir, drop your IR, add a I. Arrive, ER, drop your ER, add a E aigu. So those are the only 5 irregulars. Okay, so there is a rule with past tense with etre that's slightly different than with avoir. So when we write in the past tense with etre, your past participle has to agree in gender and number with your subject. So what that means is when your subject is feminine, we add an E, and if it's plural, we have to add an S. So in this case, we have Carol et Marie-Louise sont rentrées à 9 heures. So Carol and Marie-Louise are girls. So the proper form of the subject would be L, E-L-L-E-S, plural. So since they are girls, we had to add an E to the end of rentrée, and because there's more than one of them, we also had to add an S. So instead of just regular rentrée, it has an extra E and an S to the end. All right, well that is all for tonight. So pause the video where you need to, make sure you've got everything down. If you have any questions, make note of them, and we'll go through this in much more depth when we get back together as a class. So for tonight, bonne nuit tout le monde.